Welcome back to the InvestTalk Classroom. I'm Justin Klein.
I'm Luke Guerrero.
And today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is cryptocurrencies. Luke, why don't you tell the audience what cryptocurrencies really are?
Yeah, of course. Well, cryptocurrencies are slightly complex, right? But essentially, they're financial instruments, if you will. Some people don't like to admit that they are, but they're financial instruments.
The SEC says they are.
The SEC says they are, and that's the only opinion that matters.
Pretty much.
But they're financial instruments, and they are essentially something that you can purchase either through a centralized or decentralized exchange, and you're making a bet that the price is going to go up. Sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like a casino, and I think in today's environment, it's kind of turned into that, right? There are obviously your very small percentage in the space that are trying to build real tools and real value within the space, but it's kind of been hijacked in my mind by the casino operators, people, the bad actors that are either trying to scam people out of money, people that are interested and are just trying to go to the moon, right?
Going to the moon, yeah. But I mean, you and I talk about that a lot, right? Because essentially the technology behind crypto is something that is really interesting, right? You have public ledgers, you have a blockchain that's immutable, which is good for a lot of things, right? I like to think about maybe the implications for health records, for example, right? You have a situation where hospitals across the country kind of can't have access to individuals' health records, but maybe with the private key, public key encryption that crypto brings, maybe that solves that solution. But really what started as people who understood and loved the technology has turned into people making bets on NFTs that look like dogs, and maybe it's lost its way a little bit. Yeah,
and you gave a good example of like some real value that I think the blockchain can have and real world applications. And the question really is just because data is stored on the blockchain, does that really give it value or give some sort of use? And in the vast majority of cases so far, not really, right? It's just used to sell a dream. And a lot of people are buying into that dream without understanding the risks that are involved with buying these cryptocurrencies. And I talked actually yesterday on the show about how not last year, there was over $1 billion lost to crypto scams in the elder community, right? Just people over the age of 60 that most of them don't even know about the crypto world, but they're buying into the scams, right? They're seeing a lot of ads on social media and they're just trying to get rich quick. And I think that's
which rarely ever happens.
Almost never happens, right? And you obviously have the big frauds and the companies that have gone under. FTX is probably the biggest example, and Sam Bankman-Fried. And so the question is, how many other bad actors are there out there in the community? Not as large as Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, but clearly bilking people out of their money, and it's probably the vast majority.
Yeah, and scamming is nothing new, and this is something that always happens every cycle, right? You have situations where when money is free and people are riding high, you have bad actors that come into the Ponzi economy, as we like to call it, right? In the early 2000s, it was Bernie Madoff, and there was a situation where if the market hadn't tanked and he could have kept hiding his returns that didn't exist, he probably could have kept going at it for a while. Same situation happened here, right? Money's no longer free. All of the scum is starting to rise to the surface.
Yeah. And I think that's why regulators are starting to really pay attention. And we talked about the SEC, and they're cracking down on even the Coinbases of the world, right? They have a Wells notice basically saying that, hey, you are doing something illegal. And obviously they're going to litigate it and fight it. But just because a company is publicly traded doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe or it's the safest part of the crypto universe, right?
Enron was publicly traded.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And, there's a lot of risks involved, not just price fluctuation, but there's counterparty risk, right? FTX going under, stealing the crypto assets. And there's also
cybersecurity risk.
Exactly.
That's the biggest one. Someone can hack your wallet.
Yeah.
There's personal risk, if you will. It doesn't have a name for it, but you can throw your computer away and then it's all gone, right?
Yeah. I think, isn't there somebody that's still paying thousands of dollars for them to search for?
There is somebody who is paid an ungodly sum of money to search a dump because he dropped like $200 million worth of Bitcoin that was on a flash drive into this dump.
And he thinks that flash drive still is operating?
It's amazing to me that he thinks it's not completely gone by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for a while people were searching with him. I mean, who wouldn't? Everyone's searching for that kind of dream.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that goes back to where you're holding your cryptocurrency. Is it in a cold wallet or a hot wallet. Hot wallet is connected to the internet in some way, and that goes back to your social security, cybersecurity risk, and whether or not that could be hacked. And that's happened many of times where people have been hacked themselves, their exchanges have been hacked, and that is certainly a big risk. So a cold wallet is where it's basically on a thumb drive, right? That guy put it on a flash drive, and you kept it unconnected to the internet, therefore it cannot be hacked. And I think that's probably the best way to store your crypto.
Yeah, a lot of people still hold it on exchange, which is a terrible idea to me, right? That's essentially like giving an exchange the keys to your house and then being surprised when they throw a party in your house. And these exchanges, Coinbase, for example, have within their documents that if they go under, they can seize the assets that people have left on their exchange in order to pay back creditors. And even with that being public and there being a big fuss about it, and certainly some people going under and losing all of their money, people still seem to keep a lot of it on exchange.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue here, is that people are going in without understanding the full risks that are involved. Once again, not just on price fluctuation, but price fluctuation is probably the biggest risk, right? And you've seen that with the Bitcoin going from 60,000 all the way to, what was the low recently?
16, I think.
16, something like that. And it's bounced around since, but there's obviously thousands of other cryptocurrencies that the vast majority of them have gone down 99%. And that goes back to, what is the true value? What is the true value of Bitcoin? I don't know. We'll see over time whether it sticks around longer than a little over a decade now, about 15 years it's been around. So it doesn't mean that it will be around 15 years from now. Doesn't mean, I'm a believer that 50 years from now, we're probably going to use some version of cryptocurrency, but that might not be Bitcoin. It might not be Ethereum. It might be a cryptocurrency that doesn't even exist today. I think that's probably most likely, right?
Exactly, because it goes back to what we talked about before, which is the tech is interesting, but it's a lot of people talk about AI all the time, and I talk about how I've spoken to you about this. I've spoken to people calling in the show about this, how, the benefits of AI are going to be widespread, right? And if you want to expose yourself to those benefits, you can also invest in industries that aren't directly related to AI, which carry a lot less risk, right? Industrial manufacturing, things like that. Similar with cryptocurrency. If you think the benefits are going to be widespread, which they could be, maybe you take a look at payment processing companies that are using blockchain for instantaneous payment processing, or like I said before, health records or something like that. There are ways to get exposed to it without having the risk of one day, the people who hold all the Bitcoin decide we're not going to hold it anymore.
Yeah. And I think the biggest risk, though, to the space in general is just CBDCs, right? This is a technology that is being looked at by governments around the world. China, probably most importantly, but even here in the US, we have the FedNow system that's being developed, and that could just usurp cryptocurrency altogether. And I always say that while a lot of people believe that cryptocurrency is in the ether and the government can't touch it, well, the government does rule our here and now, our physical being. And that's ultimately what you're using currency for in the first place, right? Is to operate in an economy. And therefore, I think longer term, we'll be using a form of cryptocurrency, but it's probably going to be some sort of CBDC. Maybe that's next year, maybe that's next decade, maybe that's 50 years from now, but it's probably going to happen at some point. And maybe that means other cryptocurrencies are no longer useful.
Yeah, whenever someone talks to me about how much Bitcoin is worth, I always ask them, what is it worth? And they say, $27,000. I go, oh, dollars. Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Very interesting. Dollars.
Exactly. Well, I think that pretty much sums up our thoughts on cryptocurrency. Obviously, a very interesting topic, and we talk about it a lot on InvestTalk. So if you want to hear more, you can call into the show as well and ask more questions about it. But just head over to investtalk.com and subscribe.